Welcome to the first horror lasagna side dish.
I sound weird. What is going on?
Today, we're going to be talking about the House of the Devil.
Yes, and I love the side dish thing. That's what it's going to be. So we've got a really old public domain movie.
Yeah, and if you go back and listen to our first episode, this is going to sound pretty much the same, just with the voices changed. Steve, you came up with this idea, which I think is brilliant. Why don't you let people know where you came up with this stuff?
So I ran into a couple websites that had like all the public domain horror movies ever made, hundreds of public domain horror movies, and I was like, these are free for us to watch and not have any problems. And most of them are short and there's some good stuff here. Let's check it out. This is where horror has begun for the most part. We did Phantom Carriage, which is a classic and has some really good reasons to watch it. And so there's a lot of good horror out there that you can get on these public domain sites. I thought it'd just be fun to do a quick episode and throw in some of these in between our normal seasons.
And we are going back to the what some people call the first horror movie of all time from 1896, Georges Méliès' The House of the Devil.
130 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, and if you actually watch this 3-minute movie, which I know you don't wanna take up too much of your time, but if
You
you
got
actually,
multiple Salem's Lots to go watch.
that's right. If you watch this 3-minute movie, you might walk away, not unlike Freaks or The Phantom Carriage going, "Why is this a horror movie?" Because it was spooky in 1896,
Yeah.
that's why.
Yeah. And at the time, okay, so this is what astounded me looking up how you say his name, Melier. Is that close?
Méliès with a little S on the end.
Okay. The thing about this was he had a movie studio. This was like the 96th movie or something like that. I'm like, it was in the 1890s, or maybe it was 30 something, 1890s. And he's done how many movies? So it just blew my mind to think of people having studios. And I imagine his job was even harder than Gardner's was trying to get people to act. Hey, I want you to be in this film that's a horror movie. And they're like, are you crazy? I want to be on stage.
It's super crazy, and this is one of the problems you have about talking about is that almost anything in cinema he did first.
Yes.
So he went to the Lumiere brothers and tried to buy their projector from them for 10,000 francs, which they would not sell. And it wasn't just him. A lot of people tried to buy it all the way up to 100 grand and they wouldn't sell it. So what he did was he just took what he saw and reinvented one himself and moved on from there. And the things he did, like he was videotaping, it was not videotape, it was hand crank filming. He was filming an intersection in Paris and the thing got jammed. And so he fixed it and then finished filming. And then when he was watching it, you have a bus going along here, and all of a sudden it turned into a hearse. And then you had people walking down the street who were men, and suddenly there were women going the other direction. And that's how all of a sudden is we can edit like this. And boom, like the editing effects were born from Georges Méliès having a jammed up projector.
That's awesome. I didn't know that story, but it shows because that's the whole effect throughout the whole thing. Everybody holds their position while something appears or disappears from the scene, and then they keep acting. Oh, and you can tell that's what they did. The old school, like little kids, hold still while you change things.
Yeah, it's and if you're sitting there thinking, "Oh, George Méliès, why would I know that?" He did The Voyage to the Moon,
Yes.
which is probably his most notable work because 'cause it's got the big bullet in the moon's eye, but the guy made 500 movies, and of those 500 movies, only about 150 still exist.
Which is a shame because that's a lot of history missing. He was also some of his later ones, he hand colored the movies and put them out. So they had hand colored movies when it was still black and white era.
Yeah, and if not that I'm pushing a non-horror movie, but if the concept of Georges Méliès, like, intrigues you, oh, shoot. There was a movie done fairly recently called Hugo,
Yes.
and the story of Hugo is about some orphan and, like, some robot back in the early 19th century or 20th century. It's a Scorsese film, But the main driving character behind it is the retired Georges Méliès. And Hugo finds him and finds these films that he's made and orchestrates this whole thing where like people celebrate him for what he was.
which they should.
Yeah, absolutely. But
So
as far as House of the Devil, it's only 3 minutes long. I don't know what to tell you about it.
yeah, yeah, it's just really a couple soldiers, and the devil appears and disappears, and a lady comes out of a pot and disappears, and some ghosts appear and chase them out, and things just keep appearing and disappearing. And he had a follow-up called The Haunted Castle, which was the exact same stage setting, so it looks identical, and it's a people appearing and disappearing and appearing and disappearing throughout the movie.
If memory serves me correctly, the lady who comes out is Shaheen Daisy, who later on became his wife.
Oh,
She's got tons of firsts behind her. She was like the first to play Cleopatra. It's because they were at the start.
yeah.
But I think I read that for House of the Devil, they didn't have studio lights. And so to actually light it well enough, that's actually his backyard. That's shot in natural light, and all of the backdrops are just drapes that are basically hanging that were painted on, just like you would have in a play.
Yeah,
Um,
because the lead actor was like a famous actor in plays at the time. I forget the name. Should have looked it up before this, but yeah, it was definitely pushing the limits at the time, which makes it super special.
Jules Eugene Legris was the guy. And it's really tricky because back then they didn't have to do credits. There'd be tons of people who were in the movie. You'd have no idea because they didn't have to cite who they were.
Right. Like
But
the ghost.
exactly. Yeah.
All right. So House
So
of the Devil.
that's House of the Devil, Steve. What are we watching next for a side?
Oh man, I'm so glad you asked because we've been preparing for this. Uh, there's a whole list of them, and I had talked to my son Colin and talked to you about it. We looked at the list, and both of you mentioned Hexen, if that's how you pronounce it.
Hexan.
Hexan. So we're going to throw that one up next since it's what caught people's attention. Let's get that one out. And
Absolutely.
take a look at it. So I'll have to make sure we'll prepare a list. We'll add it to our movie list up on our Google platform, and we'll get our public domain ones so we can run some public domain ones and some full season episodes at times.
Awesome.
Cool, man. All right. Happy Halloween. We're recording on Halloween, which
We
makes it a
are.
great day. All right. We'll talk to you later, man.
See ya.